O Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of each of our hearts be acceptable in your sight. For you truly are our Creator, our Provider, our Comforter, our Healer, our Strength, and our Redeemer. Amen. Helen Keller once said, "I long to accomplish great and noble tasks, but it's my chief duty to accomplish humble tasks as though they were great and noble." I don't know about you, but I too have longed to accomplish great and noble tasks for God. And I remember when I was at UVM as a young woman, Shannon Felsky and I had a pact that we would not be mediocre women. We would make a difference in this world. And that seemed so noble and right, and I was aware that I was blessed in many ways, even to be able to attend college, to live in America where opportunities abound, to be part of a strong family who expected and supported excellence, to have a bright future ahead in so many ways. So it seemed appropriate that I should long to excel and be ambitious, rather than lazy or even mediocre. Our culture, perhaps most cultures in today's world, seem to lift up that same dynamic. Success, fame, popularity, ambition are to be desired and rewarded and honored by most people. Who wants to be a nobody in their heart of hearts? We want to have power, control over our lives, maybe other people's lives too. Victims generally are viewed either with pity or disgust. No one longs to be a victim that I know of, an underdog or a nail to be hammered on. And certainly Jesus' disciples didn't, nor do I. I believe that all people want to be great in at least some aspect of their life. And we may even lust after being the best, to be number one at something. It's only human. And it's often taught that it's a virtue to excel. We can feel that we're letting people down, maybe even letting God down, if we don't succeed by some standards. For those of us who are Red Sox fans, we were excited when David Ortiz, otherwise known as Big Papi, joined the elite club of the very few baseball players who have hit over 500 career home runs. And that's one of the measures of success in the sports world that we hear a lot about. But I found this that Patricia Lorenz wrote. Columnist George F. Will once reported that there were 3,180 home runs hit during the 1988 professional baseball season. That seems like a lot, but that same year, 25,838 singles were hit. 8 times more singles than home runs. So it makes sense then, she says, that more games are won by singles than by homers. And she said, I know one thing, when it comes to my life, I'm not a home run hitter. I'm a singles kind of gal. Sometimes I get discouraged because I don't accomplish great things. I know I won't be invited on Oprah because I haven't done anything truly spectacular. But life has taught me that if I accomplish little things here and there, those little things add up to a winning lifestyle. So even if we long to be home run hitters, in real life, we all know that more games are won by single hitters, single base hits, or even if you get to base on a walk. Not nearly as dramatic as a home run, but it's still just as important to the team and important teamwork. And In today's gospel, Jesus is taking the disciples aside and trying to teach them a new set of rules of success, the rules of God's kingdom. Not the same as they and we are used to or experience most of the time living in the real world. Like the disciples, in many areas of our lives, we wonder who is the greatest. We may not actually ask that question directly, but we often keep score. We make assumptions about what greatness is and how we fit or don't fit into that category. And we all get caught up in the desire to be great, at least in some aspect of our lives. And Jesus talked about the first being the last and the last being first in God's kingdom. Can we really imagine what that would be like? And is it a kingdom that we really want to be part of? Does it mean that the choir will be made up of people who can't sing? Or sports teams of players who are uncoordinated and handicapped? Does it mean that we should all be modest and claim humility? We had quite a talk about false humility at Bible study Monday. Do we pretend that we aren't gifted so that no one can be offended or pushed aside? Does it mean that the government would be run by people who don't know or care anything about politics? Or does it mean that the garbage collectors and the poets and the housekeepers will be paid millions of dollars while executives and sports stars get minimum wage? I don't think that's what Jesus meant at all. As that's still keeping score, just reversing who gets the bonuses. Instead, I think Jesus is talking more radically even than that. He's talking about the quality of relationships, changing our attitudes and how we look at and treat each other. When Jesus was trying to tell them about the kingdom of God, to make his point, he took a little child and embraced him, saying, "Whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me." What's he talking about? The disciples were mystified. And I think we often are too. It's difficult to grasp that very easily. And when we do, it can be quite controversial. Because he's not glorifying children. And he's not saying that children should rule the world. So it's important that we understand the status of children in Jesus' time. Quite different from the average American child today. In the Greco-Roman society, children were not honored. They had no voice, no vote. In contrast to our current culture, so much is determined by what our children want and need. And we think of them as cute and precious, delicate ones that must have their needs met immediately. The advertising industry knows that we're a prime market and aim a lot of their ads at children or at their parents. So different from in Jesus' time. The child was often considered a nuisance, another mouth to feed, unbridled bits of chaos that needed to be taught discipline and tolerated until he or she was old enough to become useful and productive if, and it was a big if they lived long enough. They were meant to be seen and not heard, perhaps even invisible, out of the way. They had no claims to anything. Sometimes they were even left out exposure to die. And Thomas Aquinas even said, if there's a raging fire in your house, first of all get out your father, then get out your mother, then get out your wife, and then get out the children. So they were like nobodies in that culture at that time. So I think if Jesus were here today, trying to help us to understand about the kingdom of God, I don't think he would take one of our children to demonstrate his point. Instead, he'd take some kind of an undesirable, a loser, perhaps the mentally sick or the homeless refugees, the disenfranchised, the silenced ones that just seem to be in the way of the important people. A poor woman in Honduras expresses eloquently what it's like to be one of the little ones. They say we have a democracy in Honduras, she said, because that when there's not a coup, we have elections every 4 years. But democracy means more than just elections. Democracy means that all people have the same rights. Democracy means that we all have the same opportunities, that we all have the right to live a decent life. Maybe there's democracy for the rich, but certainly not for the poor. Let me give you an example of what happened to my friend Carmen. She was married to Juan, and they had 6 children. And when the children were still quite young, Juan got cancer and died. Carmen was left to fend for herself. She had a small piece of land that she and the children used to grow food to feed themselves. It wasn't much, but at least they weren't starving. Well, Hector Gonzalez, a big politician with a liberal party, had some property next to her house. There was only a small road leading to his property, and he wanted to build a bigger road so his car could get through. But the land leading to his property belonged to Carmen. When Juan was alive, Hector tried to buy it from him, but Juan refused because they needed the land. So soon after Juan's death, Hector decided to go after the land again. And he went to INA and claimed that he was the legal owner. Now, Carmen is a poor, shy woman, and she wouldn't scare a mouse. So when this big Hector came around saying the land was his, she didn't know what to do. And of course, the director of INA was on Hector's side, since Hector was a big shot in the Liberal Party, and the Liberals were in power. So Carmen came looking for me. Alvia, she said in tears, I need your help. Hector Gonzalez wants to take away my land. I'm a poor widow. You know I need that land for my children. It's the only thing my husband left me. How can they do this to me? So the next day, I went to INA with her. And we took her land title and went to see the director. And the director said Carmen had to give up the land so Hector would have access to his property. Carmen's my friend, I said, and I've come to defend her. She's a poor widow with 6 children, and she needs every inch of land she can get. And Hector has no right to the land because it's planted with corn and beans, so according to the law, it's fulfilling its social function. Besides, that rich blankety blanks got plenty of land, more than he needs. He shouldn't go stealing land from a poor widow. The director told us he couldn't decide the case, that we'd have to take it to court. Well, of course, Hector could afford a good lawyer, and Carmen couldn't. So who do you think won the case? But in the kingdom of God, Carmen and her family will be honored, welcomed, given voice and vote. It's such a radical idea that everybody counts, especially those who nobody thinks do count. But it isn't just a reversal of who's important. The focus is also on welcoming and serving one another, instead of always expecting to get served or praised. I remember when I was a resident assistant at UVM. On the first day of school, it was my job to greet incoming freshman students and their families and help them get settled. And I remember feeling scared. What if they didn't like me? What if they were all wealthy snobs? What if I said the wrong things and wore the wrong clothes and had an outdated hairstyle? I wanted to make a good impression as their RA. I wanted to think I was great. I wanted to be great. And as they came in, I realized that they were just as nervous or more so than I was. They had questions and concerns that I could easily help them with. And I got so caught up in helping them that I forgot all about my reputation and my worries. And I had a wonderful time. And soon realized the joy of welcoming them into this new adventure in their lives. If I had instead felt too important to help them, to answer their foolish questions, or to take time away from my important duties, we all might have had a miserable year together. Or if I had only spent time with the rich, self-assured, elite students and left the scared, insecure ones to fend for themselves, I might have felt like I was in with the in crowd. But I found that there is joy and blessing in welcoming all kinds and all sorts of people. And I found the joy of service, giving of myself to make someone else's life better. Now Jesus is trying to tell his disciples that he will be giving himself away for all of humanity in the ultimate sacrifice of his life. That's not the kind of greatness that the 12 were looking for in their leader. And it's not the kind of greatness that we feel real comfortable about either. We want greatness so that our own lives will be better and richer. But Jesus says that in the kingdom of God, our greatness, our giftedness, our value to God comes from sharing ourselves and our gifts with others, especially those not like us, especially those who cannot ever repay us. How we feel about Jesus' message depends on whether we understand ourselves to be elite insiders or those on the margins. If we have often felt left out or unappreciated, the gospel is the best news, for Jesus says that he wants and needs us. If in our hearts of hearts we know ourselves to be great and gifted and competent and talented, Jesus' words are a supreme challenge to use all that we are and all that we have to welcome and serve those whom we have no reason to serve by worldly standards. Because, of course, it doesn't have to be our concern that there are so many million refugees around the world. It's not our fault, of course, so why should we lose any sleep over it? It's not our fault that so many million people have AIDS in Africa, or that there are so many victims of war around the world. As we sit down to our Thanksgiving feast, we can easily, or our turkey supper, we can easily live our lives without a single worry about the world's hungry, needy, and displaced persons. Unless we seek to live in the kingdom of God. We will not be welcomed there unless we are willing to honor and care about all God's children. As God's people, we are gathered in his name to seek to be members of his kingdom and to welcome others to join us here. Jesus calls us here not because great in the eyes, not to become great in the eyes of the people of Newbury and Bradford, but to become servants to all those who don't belong. To find ways to genuinely and warmly welcome them into our company. The good news is that in God's eyes, we all belong. We all are great. And when we really believe that in our souls, we can't help but want to share it with others. So may we all find our place in God's kingdom and joyfully serve one another there. Amen.